In a world where information seems to travel at the speed of light and traffic at a snail's pace, where the agenda of those at the helm doesn't always reflect the pressures on the streets, where the rubber hits the road, where there's queue of issues needing to be interrogated in the name of speaking truth to power.
Welcome to A Place at the Table,
where we set the agenda,
table the issues that matter to you,
and invite you to take a seat at the table.
Welcome to A Place at the Table. Remember me? They say charity begins at home. I'm focusing our minds on an area that needs our love and attention in our homes, our children and tech abuse.
Welcome back, Nwamaka. I'm with you on the home front. I'll give you a sneak preview. Did you know that according to the Nigerian Criminal Code, a wife can be raped by her husband?
Zuma, I don't remember who said it, but it said that if you live long enough, you are going to see a lot. Wonders will never cease. I'm marveling at how conspiracy theories, ignorance, and arrogance are trying to displace tested knowledge and trusted institutions.
Welcome back, Andy. Whereas you are marveling, I'm saying since the taste for the pudding is in the eating, give them exactly what they're asking for: isolation.
Well, Yinka, you and Ande appear to be speaking the same language. I look forward to hearing more. But I'm saying today we all should plan ahead and not wait till life happens to us. So I'm going to be talking about succession.
Funke, like you, I can't wait to hear more. And I know we all are certainly looking forward to the conversations that will follow. So, without further ado, technology is a powerful tool, but when used without limits, especially by children, it can do more harm than good. Studies show that excessive screen time physically alters brain development, particularly in young children whose neural pathways are still forming. And research indicates that high digital engagement affects the prefrontal cortex, and that's the area responsible for impulse control, decision-making, and social behavior. The result? Shorter attention spans, difficulty managing emotions, and a higher risk of addiction, a major culprit in the dopamine-driven design of many digital platforms. Social media, video games, and endless scrolling apps are built to hook users, much like addictive substances. I witnessed this firsthand when my child started gaming. Almost overnight, I noticed alarming changes: mood swings, heightened aggression when it was time to stop, and an inability to follow a structured routine. But addiction isn't the only concern. The opportunity cost of excessive screen time is enormous. Every hour spent online is time lost for real-world experiences, face-to-face interaction, outdoor play, and crucial social development. Children need to build empathy, resilience, and emotional intelligence, qualities screens cannot replace. The mental health impact is equally troubling. Research from the University of California, San Francisco found that 9 and 10-year-olds who spent excessive amounts of time on screens were more likely to develop depression and anxiety later on. Similarly, a Yale study linked frequent screen use to mental health struggles due to changes in brain development. And the American Academy of Pediatrics advises that children aged 2 to 5 should have no more than 1 hour of high-quality content per day, co-viewed with a caregiver. These limits help prevent developmental delays and behavioral issues. As parents, we have to be intentional. Delaying smartphones. I held off my children's until they were 14. Setting firm screen time rules and encouraging alternative activities that can make all the difference. The goal isn't to ban technology, but to ensure it remains a tool, not a trap. Let us protect our children's well-being and preserve their ability to think critically. Let's talk about this.
I particularly love this advocacy I am a big advocate of scheduled and intentional parenting. I feel like this could sound judgmental, but I feel like parents will hand over gadgets to their kids anytime they start crying or something. They are being lazy in that particular moment. Kids will always cry over whatever it is they find engaging, but again, you are the adults in that space. You should know the effects and consequences of those things. When my kids were younger, I was very strict about screen time. Screen time now, it's not even gadget, it's TV, and you only have 1 hour per day. And the 1 hour, you have to earn it. If you're off your schedule on the other things you're supposed to do, you are not going to have it. And they are significantly older now. They have gadgets, and we started to manage that by having limited screen time on the gadget itself and also on specific apps to ensure that whatever it is they are consuming, you can see them and you can limit the amount of time spent on it. And beyond overconsumption of screen time, a lot of parents are not even aware what the kids are consuming. I like the fact that you highlighted that parents should sit and don't just give them what to watch. Sit with them to watch it so you can see what it is they're watching. And also check out the consequences of what they are watching on their behavior. When the kids were younger, there's a particular cartoon that they don't watch. I told them, you're not going to watch it because when you watch it, you become overstimulated. And I'm not going to deal with overstimulation.
You need to be deliberate, what she calls intentional. Okay, we need to be deliberate how we raise the kids, what they watch, and what they do. Secondly, I like how you pointed out that you need to set rules. Okay, what is the rule? How many hours? And you have to strictly adhere to the rules. They will always beg for, oh, another 5 minutes. No, the rule is the rule. You don't break it. Then alternatives, very, very important. These kids are not growing up the way we did. We could walk on the streets, we could run around
Bicycles.
the estate. Things have changed. So we also need to be very deliberate in finding alternatives.
You've talked about depression. By the way, I love this advocacy. It's right on point. Beyond depression, there's also the problem of anger. So there are withdrawal symptoms starting from anger that these children display. I like that, or rather, I'd like to also say that allowing excessive screen time for your children affects their brains in such a way that they're not able to do what is called critical thinking. Their brains slow down because they're still at the formative stage. They're not like us. We've pretty much formed. But these are kids that are still growing. So it's very dangerous. So it tampers with their ability to think critically. And addiction of any type is dangerous, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, or whether it's screen time, as we're talking today. So it goes back to parents, and it's unfair to allow your child grow in such a way that they cannot be divorced from devices. It is very different from how we grew up, and this is how we came to the point where there is a problem with values.
I think the problem we are facing is a problem of the reality of the current times. And I don't want to sound like I'm trying to defend parents.
Lazy parenting.
Lazy parenting. But the reality is that we have moved like 2 or 3 generations. When I was growing up, I came back from school, my mom was there. And my father, goes to work and comes back late, but my mom was a teacher. She was home at 3, 4 o'clock.
Same here.
And I spent most of my time outdoors. So I come back from school, grab my football, and then we head to the streets. TV started at 4 o'clock, ended at 12. That was it.
And then as a child, you are also struggling with the parents who watch something.
Exactly. We only had one TV in the house. There was only one screen.
Yes.
Okay, now both the man and the woman, both parents are out there trying to make a living because they have to balance the budget. And now you don't just say, okay, the man's income is enough. So you now find out that
so both parents are not there.
Both parents are not there. So that reality confronts the child. So sometimes when the parent says, just take the tablet, it's not because they don't want to spend time. It's just because he or she is too tired at that particular time to be able to do that. we also have to recognize that there are some children that are referred to as neurodivergent children.
Neurospicy.
They are on the spectrum. And most of these children are actually trained using devices because that's what gets them controlled and regulated.
I remember what Oprah Winfrey said. She grew up on books. If you're not at home, mommy is not at home, you have an assignment.
I grew up
with
on books, so both of my parents were actively working. So they don't have to be on devices when you're not there.
Yeah, you're talking about regulating it, but there's some things that you said. You talked about two parents working, not having time for their children. And I understand in some instances it is unavoidable, but it's not always the case. These are from consequences of choices that we make. Parenting is hard. It's very hard.
And sacrificial.
Yes, it needs to be sacrificial because at the end of the day, whatever you've put in that child, they're stuck with it.
For life.
And their brains are messed up. So you need to make out time for your children. And if you cannot make out that time, maybe you shouldn't have them.
And that itself is the core of intentional parenting. Being intentional about when, how, and when you have the children and how you raise them. And outside that, children should be allowed to be bored. A lot of parents do a lot of trying to keep, no. They should be allowed to be bored and self-entertain.
You know what's the real intentional parenting?
Thank you, Zuma.
You know what's real intentional parenting? One of the parents decided to stay at home with the children.
And I'll say it again. Technology is a tool, not a trap.
Sounds catchy, Nwamaka.
I hope it catches on.
Here's something else I hope catches on. Criminalizing marital rape in Nigeria. Did you know that according to the Nigeria Criminal Code, a husband cannot rape his wife? Did you know that according to the Nigerian Penal Code, rape can only occur if the wife hasn't reached the age of puberty? Did you know that even the Violence Against People's Prohibition Act states that a married woman can only be raped if someone impersonates her husband? In 2025, these are the laws Nigerian women have to deal with. These are the laws that tell them their bodies are not their own. These are the laws that perpetrate violence and shamefully undermine their fundamental human rights. Rights that are enshrined in both national and international law. Article 3 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights guarantees the right to security of person. Marital rape is a direct, brutal violation of this fundamental human right. Nigeria's signature on CEDAW, committing us to equality within marriage, is a cruel joke. While this legal loophole remains, Nigerian married women have been told in no uncertain terms that their I do is a surrender of their bodily autonomy. The right to choose, the right to say no, is stolen from them the moment they walk down the aisle. We need to change this. We need immediate legal action to amend the criminal and penal codes to explicitly criminalize marital rape. We need a national awareness campaign to educate every Nigerian about the true meaning of consent and understanding that a marriage certificate is not a license to rape. Every woman, regardless of marital status, has the absolute right to say no and know that her no will be respected. Nigerian women deserve to be safe. They deserve to be respected and free in their own homes. This is a call to action. We implore lawmakers, civil societies, and every Nigerian who believes in justice and equality to lend their voice to this. The time to act is now. Let us build a Nigeria where women's rights are not just words on paper, but a vibrant, undeniable reality.
Now, Zoom sat here last week, and I remember you saying that, when we were talking about child labor, that we shouldn't be
use the Western standard.
The Western standards.
Yeah.
And I'm beginning to wonder here, are you not using the same, premise? Because the question for me is, what is marital rape? Rape is rape. Why do we then have to create another subsector, you know, so I mean, so you say, you know, it's marital rape. Okay, so what about, you know, boyfriend, girlfriend rape? Or
At least they're not married.
you know.
At least they're not married.
So, you know, the point I'm trying to make is this, is that do we have laws regarding rape? Is it strong enough? Is there things that we should look at it to strengthen it? The answer is probably yes. But should we now start creating complexities within that by identifying some of these things, like we're talking about marital rape? Because there's a thin line here.
Okay, I don't think you heard her advocacy.
No,
She
I'm
was
not
talking
gonna-
about there being exceptions to
What is
rape,
considered
the rape
rape?
law. That
as far as it is
yes,
between a husband and a wife, it is not
not rape.
considered rape.
that's what she just
I mean,
said.
they're saying consent is not a thing in marriage. And this is not Western, this is humanity.
Okay, let me
My point
some
is,
light. Let me shed some
my
light.
point is that consent is a universal, you know, issue. Okay, the question whether it is in marriage or it's not married doesn't, for me, doesn't appear. All right, so if you're married, you're not married. If a woman says no, whether it's married or not married,
That is it.
is.
You're obstructing something
There
that
are
is existing
consequences.
already.
There are consequences for non-marital rape. And that is why we are advocating for consequences for marital rape. Do you understand, Ila? Like, marital rape is not recognized in Nigeria. Like, what this literally means, you can do anything you like. Anything
Exactly.
with your wife, irrespective of whether she wants it or not.
So let me shed more light.
Okay, all right.
And I'm going to take
Fine.
this directly out of advocacy, which I think is brilliant. Marital rape is a direct, brutal violation of the fundamental right of the wife. Now, picture this. A drunken man comes home in that state, stinking, unstable. He forces himself on his wife, who is repelled at that state that he is, but he forces himself on her without her consent. That is rape.
Yeah, I agree.
Picture another man, a violent man, having his wife in that state of rage. It is wrong because it's without her consent. And the Nigerian law does not recognize all of these.
I think I'll chime in here. Zuma, no is no. Legislation is good, and we should put pen to paper already. However, having said this, how much will legislation solve? I think while we legislate, I agree, for very recalcitrant cases, what we should focus on is education, sensitization, risk communication, and community engagement. Now, I've heard of some cultures where there'll be trouble in the home if the woman uses her resources or money to fill the gap or provide some basic needs. So we need to interpret marriage differently. We need to educate people about what marriage is, what are the roles and responsibilities, that someone is married does not make her or he the property of another person. Like, it's a partnership. I think we need to reorientate ourselves and the society. And to what you were saying, why I think she's bringing out marital rape, because it's difficult to report marital rape.
Yes.
Right? It's very, very difficult. Like, I can imagine, we've heard cases on social media where you go to the law enforcement, I don't want to call a specific one, and say your boyfriend raped you, and they ask you questions that you went to his house, what were you doing in his house? You can imagine that's between boyfriend and girlfriend. Then you can imagine between husband and wife, the things the wife will hear if she goes to report her husband for raping her.
Marriage does not equate surrendering your fundamental human right. Yes, we're married because we love each other and we really, really dig each other. However, you should still maintain dignity
Respect.
for my person. I should maintain dignity for your person. So if I say no, even within that marriage, you should understand that it is a
respect
no.
it.
Not jump on people. There should be that respect for fundamental human right. Why are you guys laughing?
Thank you, Funke. Umar Bakar. What are your thoughts about this?
I think I've been interjecting whenever I've been talking. I've said a lot. There's always exceptions, there's always another side, but this is a very serious thing. The fact that when marital rape occurs, which, when rape occurs within the confines of marriage, let me put it that way, which I think is what you were trying to say. You're not saying that rape doesn't occur, you're saying there should be nothing like marital rape. But because there's a provision that says that rape cannot occur in a marriage, you can imagine a woman who has been brutalized going out for help.
There's actually a provision of that.
That's what she was saying about the penal code, yes. And she goes for help, and there is no avenue to try that person, to prosecute that. That's the point she's making. And I think that is a very serious point that should be dealt with and should be put into law. I agree.
So I take back my. So
Thank you.
It's my turn now to take back my points.
It's a source of frustration for many women,
Yes.
and that's why sometimes we hear that this person has, killed this other person, because there's no recourse.
Can I add one more thing that, as well, one of the enablers of some of these things, the idea that a woman is property, is some of our traditions and customs that basically tries to impoverish the man trying to marry a woman. So at the end of the day, by the time you have given to the community elders, the women, the youth, this, and then they've charged you everything, it's like you think the woman is actually your property. So we also have to have that conversation about how we kind of monetize the woman in the process of getting married.
But wait, is that still a thing?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
It is, but in some parts of Igbo land, the culture, like when they're getting married, there is some money the man has to pay. And that money is transport money for the woman's brothers to come and beat the man.
Oh, I love it.
If he beats streets, the wife, yes. So it's transport fare, which means if I should beat your brother.
That's violence.
So our campaign begins with getting those words on paper, right? Then ensuring they translate to action. Right, Andy?
100% Zuma. They say action speaks louder than words. Put in another way, our actions can amplify our words. I'll be talking about the shocking demonization of global health security. Global public health security is defined as the activities required, both proactive and reactive, to minimize the danger and impact of acute public health events that endanger people's health across geographical regions and international boundaries. Population growth, rapid urbanization, environmental degradation, and the misuse of antimicrobials are disrupting the equilibrium of the microbial world. New diseases like COVID-19 are emerging at unprecedented rates, disrupting people's health and causing social and economic impacts. Billions of passengers travel on airplanes each year, increasing the opportunities for rapid international spread of infectious agents and their vectors. This quote was taken from the WHO website. And in view of that, one would think it's evident to all the important, non-negotiable and necessary work stakeholders in the health security space undertake, sometimes at great personal risk and sacrifices. Rather than encouraging these stakeholders, both donors and technical officers like myself, I don't have billions here to donate, you hear shocking conspiracies, from allegations of covert population control strategies to allegations of fraud, all with no evidence whatsoever. Ironically, even one of the greatest successes in public health, immunization, is a victim of these absurdities and ignorant and arrogant talk. COVID-19 demonstrated that a health security challenge anywhere on the globe threatens all. We also see that policies in any part of the world affect us all. If the poorest country today decides to pull out of the accepted global order of things and says, for example, we will no longer share information with relevant stakeholders, then we all will be in very big trouble, as the next pandemic might just be incubating in that very poor country. It is evident now more than ever that all countries, with no exceptions, need to put their monies where their mouths are. Prioritizing health security is not an option. It is a must-do, and a must-do now. Pathogens are relentless and will not simply disappear to allow the world breathe after a stressful COVID-19 pandemic. Another one might just be around the corner, unless, of course, we act. Epidemics and pandemics are preventable, but not through wishful thinking or conspiracy theories, but through action informed by scientific evidence. A word is enough for the wise.
One thing I find very concerning in the past couple of weeks is the US's exit from the World Health Organization. I mean, they are the largest contributor to the World Health Organization, and the core of the World Health Organization is data sharing among communities. So one, you're reducing the funding, and also the Americans, they are exposed to a whole lot more because they don't have access to real life data of what is happening all over the world. And in the underdeveloped and developing countries decide to also keep a lead on their data. It becomes, with the advent of global travel and global interaction, I am worried for the future of healthcare all over the world.
So there are two things. One of them is, how is this misinformation or conspiracy proliferated? We're back to social media and, unregulated, unfettered information dissipation. Anybody can just wake up, make up something, film it, and then it goes viral. So that's the danger, and it's something we still need to look at. I'm not sure the solution to that. But I will also say many of the people who are advocating or who are against immunizations and advocating that it stops and are proliferating these conspiracy theories are in countries where many of the diseases have been eradicated through immunization.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they lack the understanding of the impact and import of those diseases and why immunization is so strong. So I think that spreading information or showing people what these diseases do and bringing up history to see what it's like. Because when you look at the countries like in Nigeria, yes, some of these diseases have been eradicated, but many of us have seen people with those diseases in our lifetimes. And so it's just like a warmonger is usually someone who has never seen a war.
True.
So wants to go to fight. But if you have seen the atrocities of war, you decide to be discreet. So I think that's part of the issue. Then there's one other issue, and it's a big issue. There has been abuse by the pharmaceutical industry. And so there's no trust. Not all activities are actually altruistic. Many times they're profit-driven. I know even the COVID-19 vaccine, which was essential and compulsory, now some of the companies that produce the vaccines are being taken to court about not being open and very truthful about some of the things that they said. The claims were not exactly factual. So that lack of trust is also causing these conspiracy theories to gain wings. And I think that needs to be addressed in terms of regulation. Are the regulators really impartial? And are they doing their jobs of being watchdogs to ensure that people are not exposed to drugs, immunizations, and medication that is unnecessary, or that the side effects are worse than the actual problem?
Illness.
Yeah, no, Amaka, you've been spot on. And the case of abuse by Big Pharma, I think I'll make it my next advocacy, because we need to stay on this topic. We need to build that trust you speak about. Time will not allow me to go into issues of Big Pharma now, so let's put that in the parking lot. We'll discuss that next week. Funke?
Well, I do not agree with you that these allegations concerning global health security are without evidence. We know that the polio issue in northern Nigeria is for real. People have been affected by the drugs that were purported to be okay, and they're deformed for life. I know that in time past, HIV did not emanate from Africa. But at the end of the day, Africa became like a hotbed for the incidences of HIV and AIDS. So there's a lot of mistrust, distrust. What are people really up to? Till today, there is no known cure for cancer. You will hear that this particular disease has sprung up from Central Africa and is spreading. You will hear that these diseases, but you see, Africans can be quite logical. They want to see why this is happening in Africa when this did not originate from Africa. So they have to ask questions. Sometimes, as Amaka, I think, or Zuma said, the big pharmaceutical companies just want to sell their drugs. So they find willing victims in developing countries. We need to ask questions. Why are you not using these things on your own people? You know, so I do not agree with you that they're without evidence. I'm just going to stop there.
Funke,
I do not.
Funke, there's a difference between trying to analyze and saying evidence. Evidence is evidence. Because something is spreading in Africa, it's not evidence that there's an ulterior hand to it.
There are ulterior motives.
No. Where's the evidence? That's not evidence.
You mean
that
they formed people in northern Nigeria because of this polio vaccination is not enough evidence?
What you are talking about was a single case of a particular company in one state, in Kano, and that was an isolated case, and that is why it was identified, and the law has taken care of that. You cannot now say polio is about a conspiracy in northern Nigeria. No. Asking questions is different from jumping to conclusions.
True, we are in the dispensation, what we call the post-truth dispensation, dispensation of the alternative facts. Okay, that it doesn't matter if it's true or not, it just matters how many times you say it. And that's what has given rise to a lot of all this, you know, conspiracy theories and all that. And I was one of those people that was very, very vocal during the COVID-19 pandemic, when especially religious bodies started coming out to talk about this 5G thing that would link you to the Antichrist or something like that. And it's just ridiculous. And I just felt that they were killing people. Thankfully, we took up that Pfizer issue last week here on the table. The Pfizer issue really was a big issue, right? Where a drug which had not been approved by the FDA in the US to be applied on children, they came here, selected 200 children, all right, in Kano, and they applied that law. They used them for human trials for something that they couldn't have done for US kids. And in the process, out of the 200 children, 11 died, and the rest were maimed for life. That is enough evidence. You don't need multiple. Those 200 children is enough to be able to get people to say, hey, what is Big Pharma doing?
Look at the same COVID-19 that you referenced. All these big people in the US were certain that it would decimate Africa.
Funke, let me explain something to you, right?
I'm listening.
COVID-19 registered more deaths in the West. But because they keep records. Working as a senior technical advisor to the Director General. So I'm very proud of our response. But that does not mean we did not have challenges of deaths that were not reported. From what you have heard on the table, it boils down to the issue of trust. And we should make deliberate and intentional efforts to build trust. So I will follow up on some topics that have been raised, but we couldn't go into detail in this episode. So stay tuned.
On February 7, 2024, President Trump signed an executive order cutting aid to South Africa and granting refugee status to Africans to live their privileged 4x4 suburban beach lives for refugee status in America. The executive order accused South Africa of dismantling programs aimed at creating equal opportunity, education, and employment. Hang on, do you mean the guy who campaigned that Haitians who are legally in the US under the temporary protected status should be deported? The guy whose government is currently dismantling DEI programs meant to create education, opportunities, and employment. That guy just signed an executive order offering refuge for white people. So he does understand DEI, but only for people with a certain skin pigmentation. Okay, I got it. Now, expropriation is not novel. It's the action by the state of taking property for public use or benefit. Most Western countries have done it, including the United States, to claim native lands. The issue has always been about equity and compensation. A situation where the Boers, who make up only 8% of the South African population, control over 70% of land, largely acquired during the repressive apartheid era, cannot be said to be equitable. It appears to me that Trump is only using this issue as a smokescreen to get back at South Africa for their firm stance against Israel and as a dog whistle to the far right of his party. If truly the United States is looking to support minorities being oppressed, how about supporting the Palestinian people who are currently being forcefully displaced and their land expropriated without compensation? Oh, I forgot. A country attempting to take over Greenland and Canada wouldn't be able to take such a principled stand. I digress. According to Dr. Shola Shubaminu, Africans should be happy that all South Africans are doing is taking the land and not demanding they pay for the loss of generational wealth. It's time to stand with South Africa and reject this bullying. As said by Francesca Albanese, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on occupying Palestinian territories, it's time to give the United States what it has been looking for: isolation.
So why do you think the United States wants to be isolated?
Well, you look at their actions, and they have gone out of the WHO. They've also put themselves out of the United Nations Human Rights Commission as well. They are levying tariffs all over the whole place.
Stop USAID.
They've stopped USAID. I mean, so it seems like they are crying out for isolation. So let's give them what they want.
Let me follow up on Zuma's question. So Yinka, actually, I would have loved to say along with you, enough is enough. We refuse to be bullied. And not only isolation, let's even quarantine those who ignorantly and arrogantly attack the world. But unfortunately, we cannot afford to do that. Okay? Two wrongs will never make it right. Okay? We need to keep engaging. All right? I tell people diplomacy looks alluring from the outside. But it's not easy. You have to swallow bitter pills like this. Like, you know, this person is killing my people, but you come and sit on the table to negotiate peace with your enemy. Right? So we just have to keep engaging, swallow the bitter pills for the greater good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a wrestling going on in the US, and it's for the soul of the nation. And there are different ideologies at play here. And, well, a certain ideology, the MAGA ideology, has come out tops. And their path to making America great again has to do with not spending money on altruistic things that the U.S. has done, being the big brother police person of, you know, the world, and deciding to come inside and deal with their own stuff. On the other hand, you know, America has spent many years building up an image of being a country of justice, equity, you know, the free nation of the world and things like that. And so now that image is crumbling. And I believe that there's a vacuum that is being created now. And with that vacuum will come a reorganization of the world order as it is today.
Yes.
There's a space being left because someone has to do those things. And I mean, United Nations was born after World War, when the countries had to come together and say, we cannot let one nation just deal with this. We need to come together and agree on some things. And now one nation is pulling out of that. One of the largest contributors pulling out. And while pulling out, is talking about extending its borders.
Yep.
Very interesting. I think yesterday or 2 days ago, I also watched the plan to take over Gaza.
Yes.
I heard that myself, and I'm waiting to understand what's going to happen after that statement. So I think that we're going to watch and see what is happening. The empires rise and empires fall.
Yeah.
And when it's time for an empire to fall, certain things start happening in democracy. You know, democracy is great, but the problem is when the general population choose something, sometimes it's not always the right thing.
Let me ask you. Socrates said democracy is the second worst form of government after tyranny. I totally agree with him, as we can see.
America was supposed to be a republican, was meant to be a republic, which was meant to be an antidote to pure democracy. But in this instance, the experiment seems to not be working because the gatekeepers who in the past would stand have fallen. There's still a few trying to hold their positions, but it's a struggle. So, I mean, I'm wishing America all the best, but they need all the luck and prayers that they can get.
Okay.
Well, certainly we are not going to be praying for them because if you willingly bring something upon you, then you deal with the consequences of your choices. So it was a choice by America. And I think it's really uncharitable for President Trump to want to cause disharmony and disunity in another country by segregating, intentionally segregating that country and offering something for a section of that country. And you know, saying that I want to uphold this, I want to uphold your own country. Leave other countries to their internal politics and how they run their countries. It's like President Trump wants to take South Africa back to that racial segregation, that history and that time of racial segregation, and it's not right. It is not right. I like that Canada stood up to the bullying and gave it back to the US. You don't exist in isolation. However, if you want to exist in isolation, we are here to help you because it is not just about you, it's about us also and other people. We buy from you as well, and we can choose to not buy from you again. You cannot say you want to annex a whole country to your own country. Imagine what the president of Mexico also said. Oh yeah, don't forget that there are people behind the wall you want to build. And yes, we can choose not to buy your stuff. We can choose not to do this and do that. So it is about isolation, and I agree with you. It is wrong, very wrong. If this is the same man who's saying, is it Gaza now, should be left, they want to turn it to Iberia, and that these people should go to Egypt. He's not in the place to dictate to other countries
So you want
what
to punish
they should do.
the whole country because of one man?
The world as we know it is changing, and I think that is okay. And I feel like it's pretty cyclical, and I think it's time for a new world order. I find President Trump very amusing. He entertains me. And it's okay for the US to want to look inwards. They've played the role of big brother for decades. So I don't have a problem with them looking inward and trying to focus on themselves, annex their resources and, you know, deploy it however it is they deem it fit. But the world should also calm down. You know, we should stop feeling entitled to their resources and also to their generosity. The post-apartheid South Africa is designed to be systematically oppressive, and it's quite sad. You know, they've been on this for so long. And in 2025, they're still dealing with the same. I'm just glad that they should be, the boys should be glad that they are not being asked to pay restitution. It's just land they are trying to reclaim. That's
But I think the refugee status thing is brilliant. I don't know why we're complaining about it.
Because the African dream is to be American, right?
They will just go and be MAGA.
By the way, MAGA is...
So they say experience is the best teacher, or even that you make your bed, so you lie on it. I say pick whichever shoe fits.
Inka, tough love. I pick a culture of succession. In the book, The Succession Crisis in Nigeria, written by Wale Adefarasin, the author said, "I'm convinced that at the core of our national malaise in Nigeria is a catastrophic loss of values." In the foreword of the book, Dr. Christopher Kolade notes, "Our real problem is that we have been poor at managing succession from one generation to the next, particularly in transferring values and standards across generations." True. It is said that leaders are tenants of time and context. So this is my call to various stratifications of leadership in Nigeria. It is a cake not wanting to be outperformed by anyone coming behind you. So this book opens with the story of Walter Carrington and the University of Ibadan. On his first trip to Nigeria in 1959 as a US Peace Corps member, he excitedly described it as a truly first-class academic institution. On his return to the same institution in 1993 as a US ambassador to Nigeria, 3 decades later, with tears forming in his eyes as he recounted the experience, the university had become a shadow of itself. Today, the University of Ibadan has destroyed one of its iconic features, the famous Heritage Park and Gardens, to erect a building. You will weep and wail to see what was destroyed. So as we gain momentum this year, start passing on values, find the nexus between mentorship and leadership that will birth a succession plan in the spaces you are. No one lives forever. What legacy then would you bequeath where you are? Who will take over from you? Think about how the rise or fall of where you work now depends on who you have groomed or are grooming to take over from you. Succession is the proper passing of power, and the instructive word there is power. The successive passing of power, assets, or other property and chattels from one party to another. And so this is my reminder to you to plan your exit from your business and life itself. Yes, life. According to eLegal, in Nigeria, testate succession denotes the legal mechanism for dividing a deceased person's estate based on their valid will or testamentary instrument. It is a grim reality. Plan yours today.
I like the angle you came from. It's an interesting angle. But for me, I've been speaking about succession and mainly on leadership, right? Because that's a theme that is of interest to me. So succession in leadership, not just in Nigeria, but in the African continent, has been a very big problem. And that is the cause of most of our problems, from leaders staying too long. Some of them are great guys, they started well, but because there's no succession plan, they don't tend to want to hand over because they don't know who will, continue on the right path. But you have to groom persons. We need to do something about succession in leadership. I don't know what it will be. Maybe we need something like a regional policy think tank or something similar, a place dedicated to grooming leaders, where you will know that, okay, we've groomed this guy and we've seen in his whatever daily dealings and his businesses that he's a great guy or a great woman and can take over. As a matter of fact, while Socrates felt that monarchy was one of the best forms of government, through common sense, you would think it's bad because it's hereditary. It's because he said from birth they are being groomed to be leaders.
A huge part of the succession gap in Africa is due to lack of intentionality. We don't do futuristic thinking. We only think about the now. And this shows in the way we handle our businesses and also the way we manage our personal life. I like the fact that you decided to highlight both aspects. You see organizations, they know their CEO is retiring maybe in the next 5 years. Nobody's thinking who is going to fill this gap. There are very few organizations who are intentional about having a succession plan. They are who actually recruit people, top players, and then they let them compete against themselves over time to see who would be in a position to be leaders. And not just that, they also create backups to the people who they deem deemed to be worthy to be the prospective leaders. Also in our personal life.
They'll say they are your gas seat, they'll fire you.
And I agree with Wale, on the catastrophic loss of values. I think that is the genesis of most of our problems in Nigeria. Like we've always said, we need to come together as Nigerians to define what are our values, what are the things that are important to us, and then not just agree on it, also cascade it down. Let people know these are the things we stand for. This is what makes a Nigerian, and then towards that we can now start planning for the next generation.
Just a quick thank you to Pastor Wale Adefarase. I remember that he sent us a copy of the book, The Succession Crisis in Nigeria, and like you, I read the book, and I was fascinated, and I would encourage people to read that book as well. I think it explains a lot of the issues that we're facing. Now, I want to share my perspective based on the personal story that I had, and just to add to what Zuma said. I remember this was 2003. How many years ago is that? Almost over 20 years ago now, right? Mm-hmm. I was seated in the office of a chief executive officer of a multinational company. And I was supposed to be going through a possible exit interview. Because as I was entering into that office, I wasn't sure whether I was going to still have a job. So that was my interview with this particular chief executive officer. And there was a question he asked me. He said, where do I see myself in 5 to 10 years? That was the question he asked me. And I said, and these were my exact words. I said, exactly where you are sitting. That was what I said to him. I said, exactly where you're sitting. And you see, those words almost costed me many years after. Because he remembered those words and he used it against me. Because he felt I was too ambitious. That I wanted to take over his job and all that. And I said to him, I think you should be concerned if you have an employee working for you who doesn't aspire to be where you are. You shouldn't have that kind of person as a staff. Everybody that works for you must aspire, must compete for that top job, and then you know that you really have people. The problem is that we have a society here in Nigeria that rewards mediocrity, that rewards bootlicking, that rewards eye service. So the people that get to the top are the people that, like follow and all that. So the leaders who should be able to look out for possible replacement or to recreate themselves are not interested because they see that other person as a competitor. So they're looking for every opportunity to bring this person down. And that's why we have a leadership crisis in Nigeria. Today, the reality is that you look at every strata of our society, whether it's in the church, in the mosque, in the political space, all right, even in our local corporate, the same problem is there. Wherever you find a Nigerian, there's a succession crisis in the making.
We've all touched on the loss of values. And the loss of values means that the pool for succession is very shallow.
If it exists at all.
Yeah. And what is the shallow pool is also being decimated by Japa-ism.
Right.
There are also organizations that are looking for successors, trying to plan, but halfway through the successors leave because of the economic situation of the country. And I think that needs to be factored in. Maybe it wasn't the case before, but it's a thing in this season that we're in. And because the pool is very shallow, when entrepreneurs or business people are engaging, that means they train. Now, can they train fast enough to match the pay? Because they're investing in the training. And by the time they finish training, the value of the people they've trained has doubled or tripled.
That's right.
A big multinational will just come and swoop in and take them.
I don't see why our leaders don't see it. Japa is the worst thing that is happening to this country. It's almost similar to it's almost as bad as the transatlantic slave trade.
Yeah.
Okay? It's the worst thing happening to this country, and we just have to stop it somehow. I don't know how.
Part of the benefits of Japa is the pool is very much tainted in Nigeria. There's no system there's anti-system at play. When people travel abroad, they begin to see how things ought to work and they begin to catch a vision. And those people can be returnees to come back and help the nation.
That's true.
When Obasanjo was the president, he went abroad and brought back a lot of Nigerians, and they did a lot.
For me, when the best brains in a country are systematically living in droves, it is terrible for the system. I work in the health sector, go to any hospital, a fine nurse, a fine doctor, a fine lab scientist, the next time you go, the person has gone.
Is the point, to summarize all of this, the point we're making is that there is a succession gap in almost all the sectors in Nigeria. But yes, I agree with you that it's okay for some people to leave, but we have to invest in training those of us who are, remaining here. So we end on this sober yet forward-looking note. It's your responsibility to plan and be intentional about your succession wherever you are. Protect and strengthen the weak. That's what Nwamaka and Zuma are saying. Unite and build trust for a stronger global future. That's what Ande and Yinka have said on this show today. What do you say? Join us again, same time next week, same channel, where we'll be tabling fresh topics that matter to you and to us. Till then, it's goodbye from all of us.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Jackpot, you just came back.